Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Weather and Earth 25 for the predictions covering February and March 2020. Here we attempt to look and see what kind of natural events and/or disasters could happen on which days in the coming 8 weeks, spanning today, February 5th, onwards through March the 31st of this year. So, right off the bat, these months are looking very busy. Definitely going to be a very interesting time. And it looks like both the second half of February and the second half of March generally could have the majority of the action. It is interesting to note beforehand that now that we're into February, we are actually well into the beginning of a new Chinese astrology year, which is going to dictate the general theme for the next several months. The year of the metal rat began on January the 25th and will extend all through February 11th of 2021. This animal sign and element in particular, when it is in the year slot, it has been very busy in past years. So it'll be very interesting to see how it'll affect the outcome of 2020. It is definitely a very different energy from the one that we had in 2019. So it's a fairly powerful astrological combination. And also the way that the other animal sign and elements that exist for every day of the calendar, as well as every month of the calendar, the way they combine with this metal rat is going to give and yield the risk levels that you see on the Chinese astrology line in the future charts. I just thought I'd mention that real fast before we proceed. All right, folks. So this is the astronumerology chart for February 2020. As usual, we will take a look at the yellow-orange line, which is the total risk for each day. The gray line that goes across horizontally is set at level 6 and is practically the threshold of when a day is considered to be a risk day. Because anything that reaches 6 on that yellow-orange line is where the chances are calculated as low. And the risk will go up as the number goes up. 7 corresponds to medium, high corresponds to 8, and anything greater than 9 or 9 and above is considered very high. Today is the 5th of February, so we do have a bit of a peak today, and it scores about 7 to 7.5, so we're looking at a medium risk for natural disaster as I speak. This chart I made a few days ago, but it takes a little bit of time for me to put this together onto YouTube to make it as a video. Hopefully today will pass without much consequence. I will have to check the news to see if anything's going on today, but so far I think everything's okay. And as we move onwards in time, we see a couple more peaks on the 9th of February and the 11th of February. Now, before I continue, in case you haven't heard before, this yellow-orange line, the total risk line, is a combination of numerology, Chinese astrology, and a little bit of the Western zodiac, which just gives an extra point, really, and only highlights certain parts of the month, which are a little bit more conducive for a larger number of natural disasters than other parts of the month. So when we take all these lines and add them together, we end up with a yellow-orange line. In reality, it's the numerology and the Chinese astrology that really dominate where the total risk line will be on the map. And for the first half of February, we have a few peaks, but you easily can see that on the second half of the month, especially after the 17th of February, things really take a dramatic turn upward. So starting off with 9th of February onwards, which is the next coming peaks, these 2 days seem to be single risk days with a break in between on the 10th. So whenever we have a single risk day period, like February 9th in this case, or February 11th, we could be talking about a sudden natural disaster, possibly an earthquake or other geological event that happens suddenly, or a severe weather event that's short-lived, such as a tornado. Things quiet down again towards February 12th onwards, especially between the 13th and the 17th, where there's only two very small peaks on the 14th and 16th of February. Possibly moderate earthquakes around those days. Nothing much greater, hopefully. But after the 17th of February, there's a very strong peak on the 18th. And then it just goes up and down, and it reaches a climax on the 23rd of February, where the risk shoots up all the way past 9 on the scale. It's 9.5. Then drops way down on the 24th, only to rise sharply again on the 25th, drop on the 26th, rise on the 27th. This extreme rate of change between these days tells me that we could have a lot of sudden natural disasters around those days. So this is definitely an earthquake indicator, possibly a major earthquake. But also, since we do have an extended period between the 18th and the 23rd, we can also see a longer duration event, such as a major weather event or disaster, possibly severe weather outbreak with a lot of tornadoes and also winter storms, possibly cyclones in the southern Pacific. So there's definitely a lot that can happen between these days. And also the edge days, like the very beginning of the period, which is the 18th of February, and the ending, which is the 23rd into the 24th, could be the main earthquake time frame. It is a bit of a tricky one to pin down as to what exactly will happen between the 18th of February and the 27th, but I could say almost for certain this will be the big risk part of February 2020. And this is not a typical astronumerology chart. This one is very risky. There's a lot of energy in late February, and I would advise anyone that is watching this video to just be in tune with the news as we approach this part of the month, just in case, something's not brewing, such as a storm, or if earthquake activity started to increase prior to the 18th of February, because that could be an indication of things to come. So this is not meant to scare anybody, but it is something that I've been doing for years now. And when I see these things on the chart, in years past, this has been eventful. Hopefully we will get lucky this month and not much will happen. So, yep, that's February. Now let's take a look at the month of March, which is coming afterwards. Okay, guys, so now we're looking at March 2020. And, yep, once again, it looks busy. It looks very busy, guys. Very similar to February, and possibly even a little bit more extreme even towards late March, surprisingly. There's a lot of heavy indication towards the time frame between March 21st and the 31st. But first off, let's begin with early March. We come off a small peak on the 1st that is followed by some days of calm, and then we have a bit of an intense peak on the 4th, which is almost an 8, or even an 8. So this is definitely a risky point that should not be left unmentioned. Due to the shortness of that peak, meaning it looks like it's mainly really just March 4th, we would have to look at the potential for there being a sudden natural disaster. So earthquake or tornado outbreak definitely comes to mind. And just to be on the safe side, we should include some grace time frame period between March 3rd and March 5th, because time zones around the world can change things a bit. It could be the 4th in one part of the world, but it could be another day somewhere else. So just to be safe, looks like 3rd of March to 5th of March, we should keep an eye out for potential event, which will most likely happen on the 4th. After that, there's a little bit of a peak on the 6th of March. So if there was anything major on the 4th, like an earthquake, maybe the 6th could feature an aftershock or something around that line. The risk levels off, drops off, and then rises again on the 10th. On the 10th of March, fairly significant risk date, 10th into the 11th, possibly another earthquake or weather event, and then a little greater risk on March 13th for something similar. And then we have this up and down pattern again, where we have a little bit of risk on the 15th, followed by a steep drop off around the 17th, only to rise again on the 18th into the 19th. And it is around this part where things really take a turn, because after March 19th, which also favors, a significant risk for natural disasters, we have a few days of calm and then this ginormous peak on this 22nd. My lord, that's a big peak. Basically, numerology and Chinese astrology almost combine in perfection to give almost a maximum risk on this day. That's basically above 10, like 10 and a half. Both the Chinese astrology for this day is very conflictive and very just risky and dangerous all around. All the indicators are pointing to a busy day as far as Chinese astrology is concerned. A bit too lengthy of a topic to cover in this video, but basically it takes a look at how the month, day, and year are combined to give this day a particular risk on Chinese astrology. And then the numerology is very high as well. Basically as bad as it gets. So yeah, March 22nd, standalone, could be a very, very interesting day. And also, not to be discounted, what happens right after on the 24th until the 25th. Also, a very significant peak there. And then some drop off, only to rise again sharply on March 28th, drops again, and then rises sharply on March 31st. A lot of sharp peaks here. Definitely another indicator of possible short duration events like, severe weather outbreaks, possibly a short-lived but intense tropical cyclone in the southern hemisphere, but definitely earthquake again. Cannot discount the earthquakes in late March. So yeah, this month looks similar to February, where it is fairly busy, overall very busy, but the worst of the concentration of risk is in the second half of the month yet again. So if not much happens in February, we'll have another go at it, another chance in late March. It's very likely that the world will see a major natural disaster between February and March 2020. It's in the indicators. These are not your regular, risk charts. These are very active. So I would just suggest, keep an eye out on the weather and watch the earth closely in case earthquake activity increases again. So there you have it, my friends. That's how the charts are looking for March and also the previous one for February. Now, with all this in mind, let's move on and see how February and March 2020 could behave. Here follows the written part of the predictions, showing where things could happen and when they could happen, in my usual format that I've done in previous videos. Hope you guys find this very useful, and without much further ado, folks, here it is. Alright guys, so that was February and March 2020. You have reached the end of the predictions of this video, and I hope you found them useful. I'll see you next time for April and May.